The alarm went off at 5 in the morning, and Daniel Mercer did not so much wake up as he surfaced, dragging himself up from the kind of sleep that never actually rests, the kind that just pauses the exhaustion long enough to remind you it is still there waiting. His one-bedroom apartment in Detroit, Michigan smelled like last night's takeout containers and the particular staleness of a space where hope has been sitting too long without fresh air. The carpet beneath his bare feet was cold. The bathroom mirror showed him a face he had stopped recognizing. 31 years old, dark circles carved deep beneath brown eyes, a jaw that hadn't seen a razor in 4 days. A man who looked less like someone building a future and more like someone slowly being buried by a present he never chose. Outside, Detroit was still dark and indifferent, the kind of pre-dawn silence that does not feel peaceful but hollow, like the world holding its breath before moving on without you. Daniel worked as a data entry clerk for a mid-sized insurance company downtown, the kind of job that pays just enough to keep you from leaving and offers just little enough to keep you from staying with any dignity. He had been there for 3 years. 3 years of fluorescent lighting and ergonomic chairs that never quite fit his back right, and lunch breaks spent scrolling through the highlight reels of other people's lives on his phone, feeling the specific corrosive ache of a man who knows he was built for something larger but cannot find the door. His college degree hung on the wall of his apartment, not as a trophy, but as an accusation, a daily reminder of the distance between who he had promised himself he would become and who he had quietly, incrementally, almost without noticing, settled for being instead. If this opening is already sitting heavy on your chest, if something in Daniel's story is pressing against something unspoken in your own, then subscribe to the Bloom Catalyst right now. Like this video and share it with someone in your life who needs to hear this today. Because what this man discovered at 5 in the morning is going to rearrange the way you see every single day you have left. Daniel had a routine, and that was precisely the problem. He was not chaotic or reckless or irresponsible. Those people at least have the energy of disorder working through them. Daniel was something quieter and more dangerous. He was comfortable. He woke at 7, showered in 6 minutes, ate whatever required the least preparation, commuted 40 minutes downtown on the same route, sat at the same desk, typed the same data into the same spreadsheets, commuted back, ordered food or heated something frozen, watched 2 hours of content he would not remember by morning, and slept, then repeated. He had built a life that functioned perfectly as a holding pattern, efficient and organized, and completely devoid of altitude. The cruelest thing about comfortable misery is that it does not hurt enough to force a decision. It just numbs, slowly, consistently, and without mercy. It numbs everything that was once alive in you until you stop noticing the silence where your ambition used to be. He told himself the stories that men in holding patterns always tell themselves. He said he was being strategic, waiting for the right moment. He said the economy was difficult and the timing was wrong, and he would make his move when things stabilized. He said he was tired right now, but next month he would start. Next month became next quarter, and next quarter dissolved into another year, and Daniel Mercer at 31 was essentially the same man he had been at 28, except with less optimism and a slightly higher tolerance for disappointment. His friendships had thinned to a handful of text threads that went days without activity. His creative ambitions, he had once wanted to build a logistics consulting business, had been quietly folded and placed in a mental drawer he rarely opened because opening it hurt in a way that the numbness of routine could not reach. The catalyst arrived on a Wednesday morning in February when Daniel's alarm malfunctioned and woke him at 5:58 instead of 7. He lay in the dark for 2 minutes debating going back to sleep, and then, for a reason he could never fully explain afterward, he did not. He got up. He walked to his kitchen in the pre-dawn darkness, filled a glass of water, and sat at his small kitchen table with nothing, no phone, no television, no noise of any kind, just the dark and the silence, and the uncomfortable company of his own unfiltered mind. He sat there for 22 minutes because he didn't know what else to do. And somewhere inside those 22 accidental minutes of stillness, a man he had buried under 3 years of comfortable routine began very quietly to knock on the door from the inside. That same morning, Daniel arrived at the office 40 minutes early and found his manager, Raymond, already at his desk, a compact, unhurried man in his late 50s who had built and sold a supply chain consulting firm before joining the company as a senior advisor. Raymond noticed Daniel immediately because nobody arrived early on Wednesdays, and he asked with genuine curiosity what had changed. Daniel laughed and said his alarm broke. Raymond did not laugh. He looked at Daniel with a measured attention of a man who recognizes something in another man before that man recognizes it in himself, and he said, "Keep breaking it. The hour before the world wakes up belongs to whoever is willing to claim it. I built everything I own in that hour. Every single thing." Then he turned back to his screen, unhurried and complete, and Daniel stood in the doorway of that office, feeling as though a single sentence had just rearranged the furniture of his entire interior world. Raymond did not elaborate that morning. He did not hand Daniel a book or a framework or a mentor's speech. He simply lived his example with the quiet authority of a man who has long since not needing to explain himself to anyone. But over the following 2 weeks, in brief exchanges before the office filled with noise and colleagues and the machinery of the ordinary day, Raymond shared the architecture of his 5 a.m. practice. He called it the Foundation Hour, 60 minutes of intentional solitude before the world could colonize your attention and fill your mental bandwidth with its demands. Within that hour, 20 minutes of complete silence to let the mind consolidate and surface its truest priorities. 20 minutes of focused reading in the direction of your specific ambition. And 20 minutes of writing, not journaling, not venting, but strategic thinking on paper. Decisions made and plans drawn while the prefrontal cortex was still clean and uncontaminated by the noise of the day. Raymond said he had never met a man who practiced this consistently for 90 days and remained the same person at the end of it. Daniel went home and set his alarm for 5.
The first morning was a small disaster. Daniel's alarm went off at 5 and his body responded with the full rebellion of a system that had been trained for 7 o'clock for 3 consecutive years. He sat at the kitchen table in the dark with his glass of water and lasted 4 minutes in silence before reaching for his phone. He caught himself, put it face down and tried again. His mind immediately flooded with the inventory of everything wrong with his life. The credit card balance sitting at $4,000, the performance review last month where his manager had used the word adequate twice, the girl he had liked in college who was now running her own marketing agency and posting about it every other day. The thoughts did not arrive gently. They arrived like an unpaid debt collector who has finally found your address, loud and insistent and completely unwilling to be ignored. He made it 7 minutes total before giving up, making coffee, and sitting in front of his television feeling the brittle guilt of a man who has already broken a promise to himself before sunrise. Tuesday, he skipped entirely. He turned off the 5 a.m. alarm in his sleep without remembering doing it, and woke at 7 feeling the particular shame of someone who surrendered without even knowing they were in a fight. At the warehouse that day, he had picked up a weekend shift at a local distribution center to pay down the credit card. His lower back ached with the dull, persistent throb of a body being asked to compensate for a life not yet aligned, and he thought about Raymond's words the entire 8 hours, turning them the way you turn a stone in your hand, feeling their weight without yet knowing what to do with it. He thought about the phrase foundation hour and felt simultaneously inspired and completely inadequate, which is the most dangerous emotional combination a growing man can sit inside, because it can either launch him or paralyze him, depending entirely on what he does next. If you have ever felt exactly what Daniel is feeling right now, that tormenting space between knowing better and not yet doing better, hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who is fighting the same battle in silence. And if you are not yet subscribed to the Bloom Catalyst, do it now, because this channel exists precisely for the person sitting in that gap.
He almost quit on Saturday morning. He sat on the edge of his bed at 4:59 with his hand on the alarm and the darkness pressing in from every window, and he thought seriously, concretely, and with full adult reasoning why stopping made complete sense. He got up anyway. And that moment, that one unglamorous, undramatic, completely invisible moment of a tired man in Detroit choosing to stand up in the dark, was the exact moment the trajectory of his life changed direction. Not the day he got his first client, not the day his bank account crossed a number that made him exhale. This moment, this unremarkable, uncomfortable 5 a.m. moment that nobody saw and nobody applauded and nobody would ever make a movie about, this was the moment. And if you are sitting somewhere right now in your own version of that Saturday morning darkness, I need you to know that getting up anyway is the entire secret. There is nothing else. There is only that. Within 6 months, the foundation hour had done something to Daniel Mercer that 3 years of comfortable routine had systematically undone. It had returned him to himself. The change was not announced by any single dramatic event, but accumulated the way light accumulates at dawn, imperceptibly at first, and then suddenly and completely. He began arriving at his data entry job with a quality of presence that his colleagues noticed before he did, not performing better at the job itself, which he had already decided to leave, but carrying himself with the unhurried confidence of a man who has somewhere real to be going to. And that quality, that invisible but deeply readable signal of a person in motion towards something chosen, changes how every room receives you. Raymond noticed it within the first month and began inviting Daniel to sit in on client advisory calls, not formally, not with any title attached, just the quiet mentorship of a man making space for someone he recognizes.
The logistics consulting outline that had begun as 3 shaky paragraphs in a notebook had grown by month 4 into a 14-page business document built 20 minutes at a time in the pre-dawn quiet of Daniel's kitchen. He had identified a specific gap in the market, small to mid-sized e-commerce businesses in the Midwest that were hemorrhaging money on inefficient last-mile delivery systems and could not afford enterprise-level consulting. He had no clients yet. He had no business registration, no website, no professional network to speak of beyond Raymond. What he had was clarity. And clarity built inside the foundation hour had a different quality than clarity built in the noise of the day. It was patient and specific and structurally sound in a way that ideas born from urgency and anxiety rarely are. He registered the business on a Tuesday morning in month 5 before his office shift in 20 minutes with $47 in filing fees that he paid without hesitation. His first client came through Raymond, as he had quietly suspected it might, a referral to a small Detroit-based e-commerce company struggling with its fulfillment costs. He prepared for that first meeting entirely inside the foundation hour across 2 weeks, 20 minutes of strategic writing each morning, building his analysis and his recommendation framework with the same methodical patience he had applied to every other element of his transformation. He walked into that meeting not as a man performing confidence, but as a man who had done the work inside the silence and was now simply reporting what he found. They hired him on a 3-month contract. The fee was modest. The validation was not. He drove home afterward and sat in his kitchen at 6 in the evening and did something he had not done in longer than he could accurately remember. He wept.
Not from sadness, from the overwhelming, almost physical relief of a man who has found the door he spent years walking past without seeing. By the end of his first year of the foundation hour, Daniel had left the insurance company, converted his second bedroom into a home office, secured 4 retainer clients, and replaced his data entry salary entirely. His back no longer ached, not because the work had gotten easier, but because the work was now chosen, and chosen work sits differently in the body than obligated work. The credit card balance was gone, the apartment smelled like fresh coffee and possibility rather than stale takeout and postponement. He still woke at 5 a.m. every morning. He still sat in 20 minutes of silence first. He still read and wrote in the pre-dawn quiet before the world could claim his attention. The practice had not become easier exactly. Some mornings it still asked something real of him, but it had become his. Fully, irrevocably, foundationally his. And a man who owns his morning owns something that no external circumstance can easily take from him. Now here is the biology that Raymond understood, and that Daniel proved by living it, and that you deserve to hear plainly, without mysticism or exaggeration. The human brain in the period immediately following sleep operates with a measurably different neurochemical profile than at any other point in the waking day. Cortisol, which governs alertness and stress response, is naturally elevated at dawn, not as a burden, but as a biological invitation, a window of heightened executive function and creative problem-solving capacity that evolution designed for exactly the kind of strategic, generative thinking that Daniel was doing in his foundation hour. Before external stimulation enters the system, before the phone, the news, the demands of other people's agendas colonize your attention, the prefrontal cortex is operating at its cleanest and most receptive. Neuroscientists call this the hypnopompic threshold, the narrow corridor between sleep and full waking consciousness, where the brain's default mode network is consolidating information, surfacing genuine priorities, and making its most honest assessments of what actually matters. Most people sleep straight through this window, or immediately contaminated with their phone screen. Daniel learned to live inside it. The 20 minutes of silence that opened Daniel's foundation hour was not meditation in the traditional sense and required no training, no cushion, no technique, no spiritual framework of any kind. It was simply the disciplined refusal to fill a naturally occurring neurological window with noise before the brain had finished doing what it was biologically designed to do in that window. The reading that followed fed the prefrontal cortex with directional information, not entertainment, not distraction, but targeted intellectual nutrition aimed precisely at the problem Daniel was trying to solve. And the 20 minutes of strategic writing activated what psychologists call implementation intention, the cognitive process by which vague ambitions are converted into specific executable plans through the act of articulating them in writing. Together, these 3 elements, practiced consistently in the pre-dawn quiet, created a compound neurological effect that no single habit could have produced alone. Raymond had not invented a philosophy, he had simply learned to use his own brain before the world could use it first. And now the challenge arrives at your feet, and I will not wrap it in comfort, because comfort is what kept Daniel Mercer at a desk for 3 years longer than he was meant to be there. Tomorrow morning, your alarm will go off at 5, not 6, not 6:30, 5. And before you touch your phone, before you speak a single word, before you allow the world to walk through the door of your attention and begin arranging your day according to its needs rather than yours, you will sit in silence for 20 minutes. Then you will read for 20 minutes in the direction of the thing you actually want to build. Then you will write for 20 minutes. Not feelings, not complaints, but strategy, a plan, a decision. One concrete step rendered in ink on paper so that it cannot evaporate back into intention the moment the day gets loud. You will do this not once, not when you feel ready, because ready is a feeling that never fully arrives for the people waiting on it. You will do this 90 days, and at the end of those 90 days, you will not recognize the quality of clarity you are operating with, and the life beginning to assemble itself around that clarity bears no resemblance to the one you settled into before you found this video. Daniel Mercer was nobody at 5 a.m. in a cold Detroit kitchen with a broken alarm and a $4,000 credit card balance and a dream folded into a drawer. He was nobody, and he got up anyway, and the world had absolutely no choice but to learn his name. You have been nobody long enough. The Foundation Hour is waiting. Go claim it, and share this video with one person in your life who needs to hear this right now. Like it so that more people who are sleeping through their own potential can find it, and subscribe to the Bloom Catalyst, because we are just getting started, and the best stories on this channel are the ones that are about to be written by the people watching this one.